Applying for a job can be tough. Often you get rejected without finding out why. As an employer who has looked through hundreds of resumes every time I hired someone, there's a lot of simple things that you can do to make your resume stand out and improve your chances with an employer. In this video, I'm going to review the resumes and portfolios of 3 .NET developers who kindly volunteered to be featured in this video. If you'd like to see your resume reviewed in a future video, please email me at jobs@iamtimcorey, and make sure that you include your resume in Microsoft Word format so I can kind of get rid of personal details. Also include the line in the email giving me permission to review it in a YouTube video. Okay, so before we get started looking at the resumes and portfolios, I want to review the fictitious job posting that these people have applied for. I think this is important. So I posted this on YouTube and I said, hey, do you want your resume reviewed? Now's your opportunity. And no, I'm not hiring these people. I am just offering to help you out to kind of illustrate to the community how you can make your resume stand out. So I gave 4 simple steps and I actually pointed them out 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is the important first thing to note. Okay, so I said, hey, review the fake job post below, then email me your resume in Microsoft Word formatting. 2, and that's jobs@iamtimcorey.com. You can still do this, by the way. I may do a future video. We'll see. I'm not guaranteeing it, but I may. And then number 3, I said, include a link to your portfolio if you have one, if you'd also like to have it considered for review. Okay. And number 4, clearly state in the email, I approve my resume and or portfolio being publicly reviewed by Tim Corey on the I Am Tim Corey YouTube channel. Okay. Those are the 4 steps that I asked for. Now, this is kind of my first trap. This is something that you often see when you are posting posting a job. You put certain things that you want the candidate to do. Submit your resume this way. Make sure you have this, whatever it may be. If you can't follow directions, that's the first big red flag. So I've had people email in their resume or their portfolio and they did not do step number 4. Well, guess what? That's an automatic rejection. First of all, because I'm not going to highlight your resume or portfolio on this channel without that explicit permission. Now, you could say, well, it's implied because you email. I want that explicit permission. It's just a personal preference. But that's what I asked for in this job posting. And you didn't follow those directions. So why is this a red flag? Well, because if as your boss, I give you a set of tasks and you don't follow directions, then I'm going to be frustrated because we're going to have problems. We have to go back and redo work. I want to be able to hand off a task to someone and have them do it. So if you can't follow a very clear step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, that's a problem for me. Remember, when you are applying for a job, why would a company ever hire anyone? Well, it's to allow them to get more work done. They want to be able to hand off work to a new employee and say, hey, do this work. Now, it may take a little bit of time to get you up to speed, whatever. But that's the whole point of having employees, is to hand off work and have them do it. If, as an employer, I'm looking at this saying, I handed off work, very simple work that you can do, and you didn't do it, that's a big red flag. Okay, so that's the first one. So I did say in here that we're going to review this as a US-based perspective. And that's important as we go through this because different countries do have different ways of looking at jobs and looking at experience and looking at the job market in general. So just to be clear, I am looking at this from a US-based perspective. So the job, the title is C# developer. The requirements are 2 years experience in C#, 2 years experience in web development, and 2 years experience with SQL. Those are the requirements. Now, one of the things that if you're applying for a job, you don't have to meet all the requirements in order to apply. I would encourage you not to apply for senior developer positions when you've never been a developer professionally. That's probably a stretch. But don't think of these as if I don't fully meet everything, I can't apply. Definitely still apply. There are things you can do. We're going to talk about that as we go. There are definitely things you can do to make sure that you make yourself look more fit for this, even if you haven't got the 2 years professionally in all three of these categories. Now, I also list some desired skills: Blazor, API, authentication authorization, Azure, source control, DevOps. So what I've done here is my next kind of trap. This is how you filter resumes. Because what I've done is I said, hey, here's the things that I'm looking for. And that's a pretty big list of desired on top of the expected. And quite frankly, this is tame compared to some job postings. Some job postings ask for the world. But I try to keep it somewhat reasonable. But what I'm going to do then is I'm going to look at resumes with this ideal candidate in mind. The ideal candidate has everything I'm looking for. Everything. Now, how many ideal candidates are out there that will apply to this job? Probably not very many, if any. But if I look at it from the ideal candidate standpoint and I say, hey, this person is 90% there, then they're going to be a pretty good fit for the role probably because they got most of what I'm looking for, most of what I'm dreaming for. So there's a lot of people that could qualify for the role. And that's the hard part you have to realize as a person applying for jobs, is that when you apply to a job, you will not be the only person qualified for that role. So therefore, it's going to be a comparison game. So even if you're fully qualified, even if you have all three of these requirements and you have some of the desired skills, it will be a comparison game against everybody else who has that same match. So what you need to do is figure out how to stand out among those. Because here's the next thing. I'm going to kind of scroll because that GIF is just annoying me. But here's the next thing, is that when you're applying for a job, you are giving one resume and you're looking at, you're putting tons of information into it and you're trying to communicate everything about you and how, great you are and all the rest. And that's good. That's excellent. But as an employer, when I get applications, I don't get one application. I don't get one resume. I will get hundreds. So I'm not going to dive deep into the nuance, especially not for the first pass. I'm going to look at my ideal candidate, this person right down here with all these experiences, the requirements and desired skills. I'm going to say, okay, that's my ideal candidate. What are the people that just don't fit at all? And what are the people that fit really well, seemingly? And what are the people in the middle? And I'll group them in those three categories. And the people who don't fit at all just get rejection letters. I'm sorry, you're not good enough because there's a number of people that have more skills than you in this category. But then there's a lot of people left in the could be good and the looks pretty good categories. So that first review is going to be very fast. So we're going to talk through as we go the very fast review and then the more in-depth review for each of these candidates. Okay, so keep in mind the requirements and the desired skills. We're going to get into our first candidate. Our first candidate today is Kazeem. So I have edited these resumes, and that's why I asked for the word formats. I took out stuff like phone number, email address, last name, places they worked, and even the colleges or universities they went to. So I just try to be, respectful of, I don't want to put you on blast. I don't want you to put your phone number out there for everyone to read. However, just so you know, their portfolios do have some of that information in there, but they are public portfolios where this resume, not necessarily public. That's why, just again, for my personal feelings, I edited some things out. I know that you can still find it if you want to. But let's look at the Kazeem's resume from first the quick perspective. So the quick perspective is I will take about 30 seconds to a minute at most to review a resume. Now, Some people will take even less. It will be 10 to 30 seconds to review a resume. I try to give more in-depth views on people because it's hard sometimes, but you have to remember, again, if I have to review 300 resumes in a day, even taking 1 minute is a significant amount of time. That's 5 hours of resume review with just 1 minute per resume. And trust me, there's a lot more than 300 that come in for a job listing sometimes. So let's look through this from the high level perspective. So with a high level perspective, first of all, that paragraph, I'm not reading the whole paragraph. It's just too much work. It will take too much time just to read this paragraph. So I'm going to skip over that. I'm going to look at these skills, which the skills are a little bit mishmashed together. Here's a little bit of formatting problems. I'm not sure if that's the Microsoft Word format. It may be because Kazeem copied this from his PDF into Word. I'm not positive. So I won't be too harsh on the formatting. I would say though that if you turn in a resume, whatever form you turn it in as, you need to make sure it looks right. So this indentation not being there is one thing. The bullet points that are empty, another. What looks like combined MongoDB CSS together. This on the end. All these things that are kind of mishmashed, they make it hard to read. Yeah, you need to make sure you fix those things, okay? But again, this might just be because he copied and pasted from another format. So I won't be too harsh, but I would start in the skills section. And we see framework. Well, that the assumption is .NET framework, but framework itself doesn't really actually communicate anything. So that doesn't really mean anything. So .NET Core and Azure, okay. JavaScript, TypeScript, GitHub, these are weird things that combine together. Like I'm not sure why they're combined together. I'm assuming they should be in separate bullet points. React, Next, MS SQL, MongoDB, CSS, DevOps, those things, they're great for having in your skills, but first of all, there's a lot there. And that starts to make me question. If you've got a lot there, React, Next, Bootstrap, SQL, MongoDB, CSS, Azure, DevOps, Tailwind, I start to wonder, do you know all these things or have you used them sparingly? What are your depth of skills? So I would prefer to see less skills, but more targeted. The other way of looking at that is remember back to my job posting with my requirements and my desired skills. I would clean these up to be things that related to the desired skills and the requirements. So again, I'm looking at from my perspective, which is I want the perfect candidate. If your skills matched really closely with my desired skills and requirements, that's going to be a big positive for you. Some of these things, if you have a lot of skill in React, that's great. And I've said web development, so put that there. Don't hesitate to do that. But if you have some skill or enough skill that's what you're applying for .NET Core, make sure you highlight that and maybe even say ASP.NET Core as well in a separate bullet point because that kind of highlights that. Saying things like Azure and GitHub, those are good things, especially with the idea that I'm looking for someone with DevOps and source control. That kind of highlights that. Cloud experience. Doesn't have to be the exact thing that I do, but if it relates to that, then make sure you put that there and highlight it where other things don't have to be there. Okay? For example, teamwork, problem solving, leadership, drive, initiative. These are all, soft skill feelings, but they're not really something that is under your skill section. It's not something that I'm going to look at and go, oh, they listed problem solving as one of their skills. Therefore, I'm going to, put them higher on the list. So just note that, yes, I get you have problem solving skills. I wouldn't put that there. That allows you to pare down what's in your skill section to those hard things, the hard skills that you are actually trying to put forward as this is who I am and the employer is looking for. Okay, so experience, I'm going to skim over your titles and then also the length of time you were there. And then I'm going to at least start there. So for example, front-end developer, junior developer, senior developer. That's a nice progression. I really like that progression. It shows that you are moving up. It shows that you are improving your skills and are becoming more and more valuable to employers. And these are 3 different employers, I believe. Again, I wiped them out. But that's a good thing. Now, the paragraphs, they're long sentences under the bullet points. I like the bullet points. I really do. But the long sentences can be a bit much. Because what happens is I now have basically a paragraph here, a paragraph here, and a paragraph here to read. I'm skimming. I'm probably not going to do that way. However, I have seen people who have lured me into reading more. So what I've seen happen is a person will have just one resume. They have one resume that's this is my skill, this is my experience, this is my education. It is what it is, right? I personally like to see a customized resume per job, which I know some people hate because it means more work, but I can give you better success, so why wouldn't you? But if you even just have one resume, but you were to come down here and you were to say, okay, I am going to highlight this and maybe even this, something like this, where you are starting, 40% improvement in speed. I might bold that. Something like, this is a long one to hire or to bold. But what this does is it draws your eye. So now if you look at this top section of the bullet points, what you're seeing is the same stuff. But when I skim through it, I'm going to read what your title was, how long you worked there, and then my eyes going to get caught on things like 40% improvement in speed. I'm going to go, wait, what? Okay, let's look at that paragraph or that sentence. It says migrated legacy desktop application to web application, resulting in a 40% improvement in speed and efficiency. That's a nice thing to share. That's a great thing to share. And it's definitely something that an employer wants to see. Because again, an employer wants someone who's going to be able to take initiative, a person who's going to be able to make them better, who's going to be able to give them some type of value. And that right there shows that you gave great value to your employer. That's a big deal. So highlighting it like this will draw the eye in, and then from there, you're going to entice them to read more about it. And that's what the rest of the sentence is for. I wouldn't go further because that's where the interview comes in. But this right here makes me go, wow, I like that. MVC and API being highlighted, that's probably a little small to highlight. What you're trying to do is you're trying to highlight, hey, you're looking for an API developer or a web developer. These are my web and API experiences. And so you kind of highlight some of these things. And that allows you to quickly scan these things and go, oh, yes, API, MVC, improvement in speed. And you can highlight DevOps. I wouldn't say basic. I know that it probably was just basic DevOps process. You can be, you don't want to be too humble in what you do. So I'd probably handle DevOps processes. And then I'd bold that. But again, I'm looking for a DevOps person, a person who knows how to do source control, who knows how to do DevOps, who knows how to do Azure, who, Azure right here, and then a 2x improvement in time to production. Okay, so you're starting to highlight what about these pieces apply to this job. So if you even just go through and pull these things out, even just once, that's a good thing. Because once, You can highlight the things that are going to be generally most important to a development job. But then if you can customize these things, it's even better. So I'd probably rework this sentence, for example, for this particular job to talk more about what I did with MVC and API, or how much I built, or something like that, where I built a 10,000 line API, or built a 30 page or 50 page or 100 page MVC application, or 100 plus page. You don't know how many exactly. Just kind of highlighting the things that you did that imply directly to the employer. Okay, so that's what I would do for this section. The education right here, computer science, great. I would probably say what the degree specifically is in. Is it a bachelor's degree? Is it an associate's degree? I'm not sure where you went to school, if they had specific things like that, or what what it relates to. But I'd probably want to highlight that, because that's the only really value there is I got my 4-year degree, I got my 2-year degree, whatever it is, to kind of show what type of education you have. But so from an initial skimming perspective, I would clean up the skills and highlight a little bit better. I would highlight these bullet points a little bit cleaner and probably rework some of the wording a little bit. And that's probably it for what I'd change. This is a great resume. It's one page, which is really helpful. Again, when I'm skimming, if I take a full minute, that's a long time. I've been talking about this for a lot longer than 1 minute. Okay. So we have to go quick through these things to figure out what's going to work well. This profile section, I would rework that. I would trim it down. I know it's a little life story, and that's probably a good thing in some ways if you can do that. But I'd probably try and clean it up a little bit, and I'd also use, again, the bolding technique or something like that to 5 years, over 5 years. So that might help, but still, too big a paragraph might be too much, at least when it comes to the initial pass. So even bolding will help with the initial pass, because then I can kind of skim over and go, yep, this looks good. So this person right here looks pretty decent from a perspective for this job. Looks pretty good. I don't see on here, I see right here SQL, but I haven't found it when my eyes kind of skim over. I haven't found it anywhere down in here where it was actually mentioned. I do see, again, .NET Core, and I have seen MVC and API and Azure, DevOps. So those things are good. Those things show the C# experience. It shows the web experience, the SQL experience. All I really see here is this as a skill. So that's one area I'd be have a little bit of a question mark on. I'd like to see something somewhere in this section that mentions SQL. And again, that's customizing for the job that you're applying for. So that's because it's one of my required skills. But then for desired skills, I see API, I see Azure, I see source control, I see DevOps. That's a great thing. This goes higher on my list for people to look at. Again, SQL is a question mark. I don't want question marks. So it'd be great if you could at least have one line somewhere that talks about what you did with SQL, or what your experiences are with SQL, or how you worked with SQL at one of these jobs. That would be great. Otherwise, I think that this would at least be in the high maybes, if not the let's take us to the next level and have a deeper conversation. Now, that's the first pass. The more in-depth pass, I'm going to have more time to read, because I'm hoping to trim this down to a smaller group of people. And by smaller group, I might mean 100. So it's not like it's a small group, but it's a smaller group. And so I'll take a little bit of time and I'll read through this again. and look at, okay, what are the question marks I have? What are the things I could go deeper into and understand better? And one of the things that he lists is he has a website or portfolio. Excellent. I love the fact that he has a portfolio because it allows me to see what he has done with code. And this can be a little scary too, because if you've not done great things, don't create a portfolio. I'm not saying don't have a portfolio ever, but you need to start thinking about, how do I show off my coding skills? If you just have super simple samples, then it actually can work against you. So let's pull up Kazeem's portfolio right here, and we're going to look at what he has in his, love the smile, what he has in here for content. So here's his resume, but let's look at his portfolio. So here's his portfolio, and there is a lot of stuff in here. Now, this can work against you because of the fact that with so much stuff in there, the question that I immediately have is any of this stuff that you actually did, or is it a copy of something else, or is it a school project or a bunch of school projects, or is it something where you worked with a team and you were just one of the people on it? So that's a question I have. I would want to see that highlighted or clarified a little better as to what things are. For example, there's one in here that you may have noticed if you've ever gone to a suggestion site, suggestions.imtimcorey.com, for any of your suggestions for any kind of video content. There's one that might look a little familiar, and that is the podcast suggestion site, which if we look at this, it says podcast suggestion site, and then we see it says training suggestions for its actual image. And the client is personal. Okay. Date was 2023. Services web development. All right. So there's 3 images here. Images are really good because it allows me to see what the site looks like in a way that's favorable to you, but you can also show off the best parts of it. So it's also favorable to me because it allows me to see, what is it you want me to see? What is it that you think is unique and interesting about this? So this looks nice. Now the gray version of it, I would prefer to see it not be quite so gray, but that's kind of more a design thing than anything else. We can see it's a color screenshot, but it looks like it's a black and white screenshot, which is interesting. So, these images look great, but now, first of all, I wouldn't have included this image down here because notice how we have the white. So this background image doesn't repeat or stretch or have any kind of color behind it. So it just says white, which then blends right in with the rejected suggestions down here. So it makes it not look as great. So I would not have included that screenshot. You definitely want to make sure you include screenshots that make your site look the best. Or I would have cropped it maybe. But the one thing that I can see here, first of all, I see great images, and we can launch the project, and let's launch the project. It takes a little bit to load. There we go. So this project, okay, it works. We can filter down. We can, there's lots of cool stuff you can do with it. I should know because I was the one that built it. So that's one of the things that I would have an issue with when it comes to your portfolio is, okay, you renamed some of the categories, not all of them, like courses. Why do you have courses here for your what's supposed to be a podcast suggestion site? Courses, articles, other, rant out my head. I'm not sure what these categories are about, and it feels like this is not something that you did more than maybe put some new labels on. Even this here, these status categories is the same as the suggestion site. So it's in your portfolio. You don't have the source code for it to point out what you did specifically. And pointing out your source code and what specifically in the source code is interesting is important, I think. But even this, if I don't know that this is the portfolio site that's been kind of rescanned or retooled, then I might look at this and go, that looks pretty cool. But as soon as I find out that it's essentially just a copy of somebody else's code, and it's a couple of tweaks as opposed to an actual site that you built, that's when I have a really big red flag. Because what I then see is, oh, you're kind of taking credit for somebody else's work. And that's not the intent you're trying to do. I totally get that. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing. But because it's in your portfolio, unless you're very clear about, hey, this was a project that I started from somebody else, and here are the changes that I made to it. It's kind of like you're saying, I did all of this. And so if I were to ask you for something similar, but definitely much different, it would be a struggle for you potentially because you didn't do this one. You didn't create this one on your own. You just followed along as somebody else did it. So my concern here is it puts your whole portfolio in a bad light because of the big red flag of, did you actually do any of this? So I see the rest of these, I'm asking myself, are these just templates that you used? Are these actual sites? Okay, it's a clone. What does that mean? What did you code this from scratch but take the same ideas? Or did you use a service that gave you all the code and you just tweaked it? Especially when you have Airbnb as your in the logo, that's not something that I would be putting in screenshots, because that's essentially just saying, the question is this just Airbnb site? So what I would like to see from a portfolio is, I would like to see, okay, here are the things that I actually built. Now, why is there a personal portfolio category as opposed to your portfolio? That's a question too. Maybe because these are other things you built for other companies. That's cool. But I would be very clear as to what you did for those things. If you did the whole thing from scratch, if you used, what technologies did you use? What starting point did you use from it? Be very upfront. Hey, I started from this template and I customized it this way. That's totally fine. Especially working for a client, you don't want to start from the ground up. That's understandable. But you do want to be clear on, here's what I'm showing off for my skills. Is it, what is it that you're showing off? So with that, I think in some ways this portfolio probably does hurt your resume a bit because of the fact that it's unclear what work you did. And again, I'm not saying that you did anything wrong. You're definitely doing anything wrong that I can see. But instead, it doesn't show off who you are as a developer. I want to see what code you wrote. I want to see what code you got from somewhere else. And I want to see, okay, so what did you change? Now, the other option is to create something totally from scratch, something totally, from the ground up, yours. And then you can say, I built this entire thing, and here are the technologies I used, and here is the interesting bits of code that I think are important. Because a lot of times when it comes to a site or comes to an API, let's say, a lot of the boilerplate code is the same from one template to the next because it's just boilerplate code. But if you highlight, here's how I did this custom authentication, or here's how I did this particular bit of business logic, and you kind of highlight those things, that makes it a little clearer as to what your skills are. Because when I see a portfolio, what I'm looking for is, how do I see all this stuff that you've said are your skills? How do you show that off? And how do you show me that you can do these things, or how you do those things? So that's what I'd say for the portfolio. It doesn't help as much as it appears to, because it actually can be concerning when you don't know what is done by you and what's done by somebody else. So highlight your code, highlight what you did, and show those interesting code bits to show off your skills in MVC or API or SQL or JavaScript or whatever the case may be you're trying to show off how you did it, and show off why you are qualifying for this role you're applying for. Okay, so that's the first resume. Let's look at the next one. The next one up is, I'm going to apologize. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Ricard. Let's go with that. I hope that I'm not insulting you. I just don't know. So this resume is 3 pages long. That's a bit of a concern for me, just because of the fact that, again, remember, we're back to the quick scan view. A quick scan of this, I have to scan 3 pages now instead of 1. That is more time. So it's something to think through. Is the more information you put in there, the less I'm actually going to review. Because if I have to move through 3 pages, I'll be skimming even faster through the pages, and I might not even hit the 3rd page. I might be like, yeah, okay, there's stuff there. Just because I'm trying to get through this in 30 seconds to a minute. So that's something to think through. Let's talk through it. Personal information, that's great. I think the biggest thing for this resume, though, just to kind of come back to this for a minute, is this could probably be 1 page, maybe 2 pages, but it could probably be 1 page if there was less white space, and if you formatted this to be on the right-hand side, so portfolio links and personal information should all be in one section up here. There's a lot of things you can do to kind of format this to shrink it down without reducing very much the content here. There's a lot of white space between these lines here, and even between the lines, and so on. Just something to think through. Okay, so profile links, that's great. GitHub, excellent. Glad you included your source code, your overall repository. It is important when you do that, though. If you're going to just say, hey, here's my GitHub, that you look through your GitHub and make sure that you want an employer to see just your straight GitHub. Okay, we're going to come to it later, but I really like this option instead, where, hey, I developed a gym management system in WinForms, and here is the source code link for it. I like that a lot better because I can go directly to it and see it, as opposed to just, hey, here's all the code I do. I definitely like the fact that you have your GitHub link. I'm not saying that, but I even more like these direct links to direct projects. Okay, LinkedIn, fine. Facebook, that's an interesting one. I have not seen Facebook very often on profiles. It's not something I'd probably include because typically Facebook is just, hey, here's my personal life. I would prefer to see it as, hey, here's my business stuff. So here's the code I write in GitHub. Here is my full resume on LinkedIn. I don't think Facebook really applies there. But whatever. Work experience. The one thing I found interesting here is there are no jobs listed. So now I did blank out, I guess you could say that this is the job that you worked for. I blanked those out. So that could be fine. But it's just not typical. I would usually, when you see jobs, you see the job in bold, or you see some way of really calling out, this is the company I worked for. So, and the title is the title and the job are mixed in one sentence. It's nicer to see the job, the company listed as just a company name and then just the title. That way it's easier to skim. It's easier for me to look through because now I'm looking through this and this blends right in with these, which blend right in with this and these. So when I first look at it, I'm not sure where you worked. And I have to go back and go, oh, these first sentences tell me where you worked and what you did. It's a little harder to skim. Okay, so that's what I recommend for this. That's really a D and F. Little things on your resume do show off something. So Here's the thing. When it comes to your resume should be perfect. Your resume should not have errant spaces in it. It shouldn't have extra tabs. It shouldn't have empty bullet points. It shouldn't have formatting issues. Now, when it comes to, if you were to upload this to Indeed, it's going to, crush it and change it, and it makes a mess. And so I personally don't look at the formatting as much if I'm reading through, an uploaded document that's not directly a Microsoft Word or PDF or something like that, where it's kind of locked in. But it's still important that you have correct spelling. So if you turn spell check on for this, you're going to look at this and go, oh, I'm not sure what a developer is. And be careful, because your spell check's not going to catch everything. It might not check some things that are real words, but the wrong word. Or it's going to yell at you a lot for things like ASP.NET and other things that are code specific. And that's, you got to look through that and work through that. But spend time to make it perfect. And here's why. It seems picky to look at it and go, oh, you got one little spelling error, you got one extra space, you got one extra line return. However, in most jobs, you're going to be having to do something that requires some level of attention to detail. For instance, as a developer, there's a lot of attention to detail. And if you come across a developer resume that does not have great attention to detail, you have to start wondering, as a person hiring that developer, do they have great attention to detail if they haven't been attentive to the details? And if they don't have great attention to detail, why do I want to hire them? Because it concerns me that they'll not have great attention to detail in their code, which causes bugs, which cause more time, which costs me as the employer more money. So this can be directly tied to how much it costs the employer. Therefore, it's something to pay attention to. Whether you feel it's fair or not doesn't really matter. Try and get your everything correct in your resume. Again, perfection. You have the time, you have the ability to make your resume right. Try and do so before you submit. Okay? So, yes, you submit your resume quick to me. I'm not taking points off for that because it happens. Also, this is another thing that is something to think through. This person's from Iraq. I'm not sure. In fact, down here, loved this. Language skills, Kurdish and English, which, first of all, kudos to knowing two different languages. I don't. But great understanding of English, it does come across. You do come across as someone that has great understanding of English. That is a big deal. Great job on that. But as a person looking through resumes, you have to think that through. Like, okay, this person, English is not their first language, but they're very good at it. So some things might be okay to not be perfect because they come from a different part of the world with potentially different ways of doing things or ways of saying things and so on. So it's something to think through. So potential employers out there who are also watching this, think that one through. Don't just reject a person based upon a little error or a little thing, because there's a lot of reasons why that might be totally okay. So, all right, let's look through, and again, the quick browse version. So the quick browse version, I'm going to look at work experience. I do like this stuff on the left, where it highlights how long you've worked in a particular role. So 2022 December to present. So that's been about 3 months at this point. This one has been what, a year and a half, almost 2. And this one, I'm not sure if it's the start or the end. I guess you did 6 weeks of training, so that's when you just listed when. Okay, that's fine. I might not put a month on that, but yeah, so you did training in 2018. You worked as a data entry clerk part-time, and then you worked as an ASP.NET backend developer for a software company. That's great. So what this shows me is that you have about 3 months or 4 months of work experience as a back-end web developer. Okay, so you got a little bit of a uphill push to get your resume to stick in front of me through no fault of your own, because you have to start somewhere. None of us were born with work experience. So you have to get work experience somewhere. You have to be able to say, hey, I've got to get my first job. And this job that I have posted isn't necessarily an entry-level job. I said 2 years in web development, 2 years in SQL, and 2 years in C#. You've shown that you're doing web development and C# development for the past 4 months, which is great. So you're starting to highlight some of the things I'm looking for, even if you don't have the full experience. Now, I do want to point out something else that will help you even more, and that's under your projects section. Again, I'm not sure if in this section that the months and years necessarily are valuable, but the idea that you show off a project you built and show off another project you built. Again, this one is web. This one is desktop, but they're both C#. I'd love to see you say C# WinForm project and C# MVC. But being able to show these things off is a great thing, because when you don't have the year's experience in the job, you can still say, but I have the ability in the job by showing off your code. So let's do this. We're going to come back to these short URLs. Education. So you've been getting your degree. In TCI Computer Networks at the university. You also have your network department diploma at an institute. So that's great. So, and this also shows these dates show, okay, you got your 6-week training, IT training, and then you went for your degree, it looks like. When you came out of there, that's when you got your first job. Perfect. Kind of lines up, kind of shows what you've been doing. It shows that you've been pushing forward. I am curious as to why, this is just an ignorance perspective, but why you have 6-week training over here, but then you have under education, it's not over the education section. That's what I'm wondering. I guess maybe this is more like on the job work, and I'd love to see what you did there, or why is it in the work experience or internships as opposed to your education. So that's good. So you've got you've got education. You're showing that, hey, I went right from getting my degree to getting some work experience. I'm doing work right now in the field. I'd love to see a little more highlighting of. This is great. Real-time device tracking. Again, the bolding trick can be helpful. Real-time device tracking. ASP.NET microservices, and kind of pull those out a little bit to kind of show off, hey, this is what I'm doing. This right here, exploring using the latest technologies, doesn't really say much at all. So I would change it out for something specific. If you, and you've only been there for 4 months, you haven't done a ton probably, that's okay. But you could say, what type of project you've been working on, or what other technologies you're working with, or something of that nature, or just leave it off. That might be helpful, but you probably want a third bullet point there. Just something that you've done, maybe something to do with a database. Maybe you got an ASP.NET microservice code base. So does that use a database? Probably. What database? Are you touching it at all? And if so, you could highlight that there. The other thing you've listed here, and this is very common, so it's okay, but you say ASP.NET a lot. Is that .NET Core? Is it ASP.NET Core, or is it this .NET framework? You might want to say those things if it's .NET Core. If it's .NET framework, I think this is actually better, just to say ASP.NET. because then it leaves a little bit of ambiguity there, which is okay, because then you can talk more about it and say, hey, yeah, my company uses .NET Framework, but I'm still conversant. I still have been keeping up in .NET Core. I can do these same things in .NET Core. I'm trying to push for that with new microservices we build. I want to build in .NET 6 or whatever. So that's something to think through, but excellent. So again, skimming, personal skills, I would just X that entirely, get rid of it. It comes back to listing soft skills isn't very valuable. Everyone can say that. Everyone says I'm a problem solver. Everyone says that I'm a leader. Everyone says I work well with people. Everyone says all these things that really end up becoming meaningless, because how do you quantify that? Unless you can say, I led a team of 5 people for the past 3 years. They can say, yes, leadership, but you're not saying just leadership. You're saying, this is what I did in leadership. Learning and growth mindset, that's a nebulous thing. There's nothing you can pin down there. So I would get rid of that. I do like the languages and frameworks, listing them out. So, and being clear here, .NET Core and Framework, and ASP.NET Core, which appears like that would mean that this is probably .NET Core. Again, I'd make that .NET Core then. JavaScript, if it's basic knowledge, then I wouldn't put basic knowledge things on your skills and ability. I would probably try and keep those off, or especially when you say things like still learning and currently learning. So I'd be clear. I'd say, I'd probably, cut these 2 out, move these 2 up, and then say right below these 2, I would say JavaScript / TypeScript, or entry-level JavaScript / TypeScript, or something like that. So you're being clear that you're being honest about your skills, but at the same time, you're not listing multiple things you're still learning. Okay, so JavaScript / TypeScript probably covers everything here. And the other thing is, when you do say entry-level knowledge in, or intermediate knowledge of, you're being clear and you're being honest about, hey, I don't claim to know everything about this topic. What that does is it highlights all these other things where you're not saying your skill level, which means you're actually promoting those as, I know these a lot better. So without saying it, you're saying these are even better. So being self-deprecating in one area actually can help push the other ones and promote the other ones as, I know these even better. Okay, tools and technologies, that's great. Having this list here, again, 4 points is excellent, because I can read through that and then they're good ones. Okay, Docker, RabbitMQ, Redis, WebSocket or SignalR, those things kind of are pretty popular in the industry. They're also something that can be very helpful and useful. That's great. Other IT skills, generic computer maintenance, probably not something I'd include here. And when you say basics of, I get a little concerned. So I would say, maybe don't include all these. Maybe merge this category with this category, and then include this line, GitHub, GitLab, and then this line right here. And yeah, you could say entry level at Microsoft Azure and Azure DevOps. Okay, so I'd probably merge these 2, so I wouldn't have so many. When you have too many things, you're like, I'm learning this. It becomes obvious that you are entry level. You're just getting started. That it highlights too much that you have a long way to go. And what you want to do is you want to show that you are moving and that you're progressing and you're learning, but you don't want to show so much learning that you come across as knowing nothing. Okay, so that's my thought there. Language skills, I love it. This is actually a really big deal, because being able to say, I know a second language really well. In this case, if you're applying for a US job, saying I have a great understanding of English is excellent. I'd probably put excellent. Um, I might just put excellent here, okay, because you do have what appears to be excellent skills in English. So I'd put that, and yes, native language for Kurdish. But what that does is it gives one more positive that might not have even been on the job posting. So, being able to speak a second language can be helpful when it comes time to make our application work in that other language, where maybe it's not your primary role to do, validation of the website. But if we create a website, we create a version that's in Kurdish, well, then you're a rock star. You're ready to go. You can look over and go, this is right, this is wrong, this is need to change. These are the things that are important. And you can do all of that because that's your native language. And so it's kind of a big deal to list that. I really love that. Okay, so that's kind of my overview of this. Let's look at this gym management. Let's bring it back over here. I got it already up here. Here is your GitHub. Here's what I'd like to see. Okay, so you don't have a true portfolio. That's okay, because this can work as your portfolio. But when I come in here, I would love for it to look and be focused in on this being your portfolio piece, meaning that this README focuses in on what this does, which that's what this does. Now, this part of my group graduation project, that's a little concerned because now I have to question what did you do versus somebody else do. I do like how to set this environment up. That's really good. But then after that, I would love to see what each person did on this project. What were their responsibilities? Now, yes, there's crossover. You help each other out, but you probably had different people doing different areas. And if you need a refresher, you can go to your commit history and figure out, okay, what did I commit? What did they commit? And kind of figure out who did what. Then list each person and what they did. That way, you can use this as your portfolio piece because I know what part you were responsible for and what code even was something that you're really proud of doing. And if we just treat this as this is all yours, when I come in here, okay, it's a project. So what am I looking for? If I go in here to the UI, we've got forms. Okay, there's a lot of forms here. That's great. What do they do? Which ones are the ones that are impressive and which ones aren't? Screenshots would be really helpful because I could see all these without having to I'm not downloading and installing anything. That's just not happening. If I have 100 people to go through, I am not downloading 100 projects and trying to get them to run. So what is it in here that is interesting? So the member form, is there interesting stuff in here, or is the add button just, hey, we're adding stuff to the database? And the reset form is to clear the form. And validate form, okay, you can actually use a validation tool there, but cool, whatever. Use some validation. There's not like code in here that I'm like, wow, that's really interesting code. That's unique code. It's just kind of mostly boilerplate code. That's what a lot of code is boilerplate code until you get into the interesting parts. But what highlight for me? Say line 205, 203 to 210. This is how we handle exceptions. And this is something unique that we do. Now, I don't think it is, but highlight for me, where is it that I should be looking for what really makes your code stand out as good code, as something that is, you solved a difficult problem, or you did something interesting with a form design, where maybe you design a form a certain way that really looks cool. Maybe that's a screenshot as opposed to just the code, but you could link to that code as well. So, is there code in here or the data access that's of interest, like the SQL connector? Is this something that it looks like, using Dapper? Hey, Nice job. But, backup database. Okay, that could be interesting. What are you doing here? How is this working? What are you doing? And, what is the interesting bit here I should look for? So that's just something to think through when you're showing off code. It's great to have code. It's great to have code you can point to and say, I did that, and this is why it's valuable. But it's also something that you want to highlight, again, for quick review. This is another thing that you highlighted. That's the to-do web app. That's great. So again, what in here is the code that's interesting? What in here is, of value? Again, I'm kind of poking around, and what is it I'm seeing? A bunch of try catches with save database. This is not exactly thrilling code, but there might be something in here that is thrilling. Why do you do these bits here? And explain that. So just want to think through as you're giving out your code to people to review. Okay, so great job. Thanks for submitting this. Let's move on to the last of our resumes, and that's from Kenny. So Kenny has a URL here, which is great. We're going to review that in just a minute. We're going to review the portfolio, but over here on the right was all contact information. Excellent. Having contact information on your resume very clearly is excellent. This one's interesting because there are no companies that you've worked for, according to this thing. I'm not sure if you edited this out or if you've never had a job in software development. Not sure. Doesn't really matter. It's something that if you were applying for a job that required 2 years of work experience, I want to know, why are there no companies on here? Okay. And why is there no education on here? Just something to think through. Being able to tell that story a little clearer would be good. There's also a lot of white space on this for a one-page resume. I do like this one page, but the second page, I'm not sure why it's here. I think that's probably my fault. So don't blame Kenny for that. So let's skim this. So we've got personal website, my personal portfolio website, which is, these are projects that he has done. A little paragraph of what it does, and then technologies used. Love it. You're showing off that these are the things that I'm familiar with, not just because I say I've got these skills. By the way, I'm not sure if, Kenny, you customize this site, this portfolio or resume for this job or not. But if you didn't, it looks like you did, because I asked for C# skills, SQL skills, and web development skills with Blazor, some kind of source control. I didn't mention GitHub or Git, but by saying GitHub, you've said source control. And then you also have a couple extra. So that's a really good thing that you've kind of highlighted these things. I can skim through and go, oh, you know all those things, huh? And I can look through your projects to see if you actually know them or you just say you know them. That's an important thing too. Lots of people say they know things. Show me. So you're doing that. You're saying, okay, this personal website, I built my portfolio site. Cool. And you used Blazor WebAssembly, HTML, CSS, GitHub, and Netlify for hosting. So excellent. You've shown me something, because when I go to your portfolio site, I'll know, okay, he built this himself. So that's going to show me what are your skills like in these areas. And then you have the app name, Phillips, an Android MPG tracking app you built with Xamarin Forms. It's available on Google Play. Excellent, excellent. A little spacing issue there. Again, details matter, so be careful of those things. So, but it's for tracking your miles per gallon each time you fill up. And again, technologies used: SQLite, GitHub, and Xamarin Forms. Video game library, a web app for tracking games. Used ASP.NET, and is it .NET Core? I'm not sure, or is it .NET Framework? That's something to think through. Microsoft has made a bit of a hard thing for our resumes, because ASP.NET is now .NET Framework versus ASP.NET Core. If you want to make sure that you are showing off the latest stuff, you want to make sure you say .NET Core if that's what you did. And then .NET, when you say .NET, say the version. So .NET 6 or .NET 7 or .NET 5. But HTML, CSS, XUnit, Unity Framework, and then OAuth for Google account authentication. Excellent. Again, you're telling me what you did with the technologies you used. Love it. So this is not very big, and this would be a little concerning for, not showing off where your years of experience have come in, but you have shown me very clearly what your projects are and what you've done. So let's look at your portfolio as the other half of this. And let's look at, okay, so this is your portfolio. Very clear statement here. You're from Nashville, specialized in C#, made several different projects using .NET Framework as well as .NET Core. So you're showing a range there, which is good. You can see some of these projects in the Projects tab, which I like some of these because that kind of shows, hey, I'm not showing you everything I've ever done. I'm just kind of highlighting the things that are most interesting. Love that. Okay, so let's go to projects, and these are all very pretty. Okay, I love the fact that you have screenshots here. I love that if you say check it out, it shows you clear screenshots of what it does and how it works. You're showing off, hey, here's the things that I think are important about this particular app. And you can go around and look at the various things and see these are the things I do. So these aren't these are very close to the templates. So like this is a ASP.NET, probably core, but project template. And you can see it, you've used it very well, but it's the template. So the screenshots look decent. I would love to see a little bit more of the what's interesting about it, or have some kind of, if you want to take it to the next level, I guess what I'm saying, I would try and customize the page a little more so it looks less like the template. Because when you see a template page, the question that comes in is how much work did you actually do, as opposed to just using the template mostly and then doing a couple tweaks. Okay, so this could be a basic CRUD app, create, read, update, delete, or it could be more customized than that. But in this case, you use Google to log in, so that's one of the things that you're kind of highlighting there. But it's just something to think through. Again, this looks like a Blazor app. And then this, I like this a lot. I wish that you had linked to it better, but you are working on creating a NuGet package that you actually created and posted on NuGet.com? .org? I forget. You posted on the NuGet site, okay? And if we go there, you kind of talk about it a little bit. You're a little bit self-deprecating. I would try not to be too self-deprecating here. I just say, hey, this is what I do. But I would love to see it actually linked to the NuGet package on NuGet. Okay, so you can actually see, like, hey, you got 85 downloads. That's great. So show off what you can do, and But also another thing here is linking to the code. So link to the code so I can see more about it. Now here, this one is like to download the source code. You can find it at GitHub here, which is great. But I would love to see you be a little bit more intentional about, hey, here's the code on this page as well. The other thing here with these screenshots, what I would do is I would shrink these down to just the important bits. So you have this whole big wide screenshot when really the only thing that matters is this part in the middle. So I would just shrink this form down to just the important bit and then screenshot it. It makes for a smaller screenshot, but it makes for a more focused screenshot, which also allow you to more easily read, choose filter, and choose file and search when you're on this page. All these screenshots are like that. I can't really read what this says here, but when I click on it, okay, that I can see a little clearer. So I'd probably put your code here and work on trying to make things look a little bit different from the standard, which this does. This text extractor actually does. The blue bar, the text extractor with all caps, you can see it here. That looks a little different than the standard template. but I'd still work on trying to make things look a little different. Seeing things in the wild that people are actually using, really a big deal. So if you can show off and highlight those, that'd be great. And again, linking to your code and showing what's the important bit is of value here too. So that's the resumes I want to look over. Again, if you want to see yours reviewed, I might do another one of these, but I kind of wanted to highlight the fact that when you look through a resume as an employer, there's certain things that you're looking for. And so when you first scroll through, you're going to go that fast pass. And so even though you might love having all this content, being able to focus it in to just what is important, or highlighting and bolding, or having the eye-catching things that will point them towards here's why I'm right for your position, is going to help a lot. And then having that code to show off in your portfolio to say, hey, here's what I do and here's what my code looks like, also very valuable. Okay, thanks for watching. And as always, I am Tim Corey.